Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing all right. All right, 50 weeks. We finished the whole entire Bible. So we went through the Bible, about 14 pages a week. You do for 50 weeks, put into the 50 different sections, and you read the Bible in 1 year. So we made it through 1 year, we made it through 1 year. We made it through the whole entire Bible. Went through the whole entire thing. I read all of it. The only things I didn't read is when I do the Gospels. I listen to them on my phone. There's a what is it called? It's a dramatized version of the Bible, and so I read it, and then I read it with the dramatized version of the Bible to make sure. Because a lot of the readings of the Bible you don't know for sure because they're not necessarily word for word. Because people are reading and they can kind of mess up. But the dramatized version of the Bible, since it's like each person kind of says a different part, because like Jesus is like a different voice, and then the Gospels, each person's like a different, or sorry, the apostles, each one is a different voice. The narrator is a different voice, and then like the Sadducees and the Pharisees are different voices, and so that seems to do better as far as making sure that every word is word for the Bible. So I went through that before and made sure that every word is that. And so at nighttime I listen to John, or pretty much every night. I listen to it, but like I said, it's important to make sure that the words are actually accurate because somebody's reading it, they might not be reading the correct words. And so, like, I went through that. I went through with the thing with the dramatized version of it, and made sure each word was good, and so I know that each word is right. And so this time when went through the Bible, I actually listened to the Gospels. I was able to do it in my car, and that's the only part that I have of the Bible that is accurate, because even though it's a dramatized version of the Bible, the other voices aren't like they are in the Gospel. But yeah, so we went through the whole entire Bible, and this week is week 50, and it's Revelation. I just have Revelation in its own area. It's about 10 pages in my Bible, the KJV, and so it was a relatively quick read. And so I mean, the thing about Revelation that is interesting, or the thing that kind of stands out to me the most, is like, can you understand Revelation? Is it even possible to understand it fully, or even partly? Because if you can understood it, then you'd have the power to change it because you understand what's happening. If you understood what's happening, if you truly understood what's happening, then you would be able to change it, and so it wouldn't be destiny. And so, although there might be entities that think that they can know what's going to happen in the future, if they truly knew what was going to happen in the future, then they would be able to change it. So it wouldn't be the future; it would be like a possible future. So I think that only God can see the future because only He can change it. So nobody can really know what the future is, but they can know what possible futures are. They can't truly know what the future is except for God. He's the only one. He's the only thing because He has the power to change it. Sorry, just letting my cat in. I'll scratch at the door. What you got, Rosie? So yeah, I think that's an important thing to understand, and because I think there's some entities around me or people that think that they can see the future, but they can't really see the future. They can see possibilities of the future, because if they could see the future, they'd be able to change it, so it wouldn't really be the future. Semantics, though, they can see what is likely to happen. And I guess certain of them will have a better track record than others. So yeah, interesting things happening around us. Okay, so I don't think you can truly understand Revelation. So people say I understand everything in the Bible. It's like, well, I don't think that's possible because you can't even understand. Like, there's no one understands Revelation, and but can they understand parts of Revelation? What do you think? I mean, yeah, I think it's possible, but I just don't think like to understand exactly what this means is really meant for man to understand. Sorry, excuse me. But it's possible. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just where I'm at right now. I just don't. Excuse me. I just don't think it's possible to understand Revelation in general. But it does say, blessed is the person that reads this. So you definitely have something that's gained from it, and what's gained from reading it is probably something that is like part of your inside you, like your coding, or a part of you, your subconscious, or whatever you want to call it, or just like your inner self that is affected by the words and the reading of Revelation. And so it might be not something that you can see, but you're definitely blessed by, because the Bible is accurate. And so the Bible, if the Bible says those that are blessed by reading it are blessed by reading it, then those that read are blessed by reading it. So yeah, so on Monday I have the seven churches, and it says the seven churches in Asia, and so I wonder if these are like, why were they writing into Asia? Um, and so when it says to the seven churches of Asia and to the seven angels, and so are they in Asia at that time? Are they always in Asia? And so that's not something I really thought about before. But when I was reading it this time around, okay, I'm he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. I have the keys of hell and of death. Write these things down which I have seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. The mysteries of the seven stars which thou sawest in the right hand, and the seven golden candlesticks. The seven stars are the angels of the seven churches, and the seven candlesticks which thou sawest are the seven churches. Let's see. Let me see where it says. I was in the spirit of the Lord's day, and heard behind me a great voice as a trumpet saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. What thou seest, write in a book, and send it to the seven churches which are in Asia. So it's sending him to the seven churches in Asia, which is interesting because you don't think of Asia being like a stronghold of Christianity. But maybe there is a stronghold in Asia, and what we have here is just the religious authority. Because maybe the religious authority doesn't have control like they do here. And Asia is like maybe it's one of the places they don't have control. So the religious authority hasn't corrupted it. It's possible. And so another thing that I see in Revelation that's really interesting to me is he talks about the seven churches, and then also the seven angels that are in the churches. Unto the angel of the church of Euphorus, right? And so are these like symbolic angels, or are these like actual angels? And are these angels that are going to happen in Revelation, like the end of the world, or are these angels that are happening back then? So like Revelation is super difficult to understand, but he who seeks shall find. And so still, even though it's difficult to understand, I think it's important to still try to look for it. And so that's what I have on Monday, the seven churches. And then on Tuesday I have the throne in heaven and the one that sitteth upon it. And so, because there's lots of people that are in Revelation, and so the throne in heaven and the one that sitteth upon it, I believe this is God. And Jesus is the Lamb, and God is the one that sits on the throne in heaven. And I think it's just important to distinguish between God and heaven. It's interesting too, because I was actually reading this, or I was looking into, because in one of Paul's letter talks about I am. It's just this idea of God, Jesus, is Jesus God, and what's the difference between the two? And in Revelation it says that I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's what Christ says. And God says that I am the Alpha and the Omega in Genesis, and then at the ending in Revelation, the last book of the Bible. I guess it's not the first book. I think it might not be Genesis. It might be Exodus. Right, when God's talking to Moses. But in the beginning of the Bible, God says that he's the Alpha and Omega. And at the end of the Bible, Jesus is saying that he's the Alpha and Omega. And it's just because Jesus is God, and I think it's just because all authority has been given to Christ. And so God was one that was in charge of man, and then now Jesus is in charge of the man at the ending. And then also, they always say, like, Christ refers himself as I am. But also Paul refers to himself. He talks about, he says, I am what I am. So I just don't, I don't see it as it is possible that God and Christ are the same. I'm not saying that's not possible, but when I read the Bible, I don't see that at all. And it's interesting too, because you have different versions of the Bible, and the way that I am is capitalized. Different versions of the Bible will, they're trying to say that God is Christ, will capitalize I am from our understanding at least. And then the King James Version of the Bible doesn't capitalize I am when Jesus says it. Before Abraham was I am, and that's just because he was before, and he has the same authority as God. But I think when God calls himself I am, I think it's the only time that I am is capitalized in the King James Version of the Bible. But I guess I can look that up real quick. But I'm pretty sure the only time I am is capitalized in the King James Version of the Bible is when God refers himself to as I am. I am the great I am, but not when Jesus says it. And so when Paul says it, it's different too. God saying I am.
When God says I am, it refers to his self-revelation in Exodus, where he tells Moses,
Exodus 3:14.
WHOIAM, showing his eternal nature.
That's what Google says.
I am statements, like I am the bread of life, to declare his divine identity, connecting to the Old Testament.
Exodus 3:14. And Google's also, because it is the authority, so Google will say that. This is what it's just told to say. But Exodus 3:14. That's one of the verbs. Exodus 3:14. And hear it out too. There's no reason not to hear it out. In the King James Version 3:14. And God said to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thou sent to Israel, I am has sent me unto you. So I am is capitalized in the King James Version of the Bible in Exodus. But I am is not capitalized when Jesus is asked, when he says I am, before Abraham was I am. That's not capitalized. And so I think it's just like shows, at least in the King James Version of the Bible, that this is a separate thing that he's talking about when he says I am. He's not saying that he's God. But if you look at other Bibles, they'll change that to capitalize when Jesus says I am, to try to make that Jesus says is God. And they'll also change when Daniel is worshipped by Nebuchadnezzar. And it doesn't say that Daniel was worshipped by Nebuchadnezzar. He says like Daniel is something else by Nebuchadnezzar, but not worshipped, because they'll say that Jesus is the only one that ever is worshipped besides God. And so you have these different versions of the Bible, and they convey a different message. And so that's why I like to stick to the King James Version of the Bible. And I think once you get into like the nitty gritty and like the truth of things, I think it's important to have a King James Version of the Bible, because other Bibles are going to be a little bit different in their wording and the way that things are, and there are very subtle differences. But it's just this argument that Christ is saying that he's God, when I don't see that in the Bible. I don't see, and I think that if you say that Christ is God, it's pretty much antichrist, because you're saying that Christ never came. You're saying that God came. And I think this is a very important thing, and I think it hurts people's faith when it comes down to it, because it doesn't really make sense that God and Christ are the same. And so I think when it comes down to tribulation and to being your conviction, I think it falls short when you try to take into the doctrine of the religious authority, which claims that God and Christ are the same, because it doesn't make sense. That's just my opinion. And then so on Wednesday I have the Lamb opens the book, and so this is Christ. He opens up the book, from my understanding at least. And he's the one that's in charge of everything. So he's like the main character in Revelation. He's the one that's going to control the end of the world and the judgment. He's the one that's in control. God has given him all authority. Heaven and earth has been given to him. And it just shows like how much power man can have and how important man is if he can embrace what he is. Thursday I have Mark of the Beast and also the Seal of God. So the Mark of the Beast is always kind of something that people talk about a lot. It's on your hand or your forehead, and it's the number of the devil at 3 6s. And also, the Seal of God though too, which is like the contrary. So God's people will be marked and the devil's people will be marked. And when does this happen? I don't know. Is this always has this happened pretty much since Christ died, and Christ is resurrected, or is it something that happens like in the last couple of years of the world, or somewhere in between? It's really hard to know. I just think that it's important to understand that God's people and the devil's people are separate. There's no in between. Either you're one of God's people or you're one of the devil's people. And the people you come across, they either serve who do they serve? Do they serve the devil or do they serve God? And I feel like those are just two different types of people. And once there's God and the other there's the devil, there's no in between. You're either serving God or you're serving the devil. Now, things that you do in your life, people give in to sin, but they don't give up. And things that you do in your life, like you serve the devil, you serve sin, you serve evil when you sin, but you're not like a servitude of, you're not a slave to that, or you're not in servitude. You just mess up. However way you want to explain it or say it, but you either have one master, God, or the devil, or Christ, or the devil. You either serve good or you serve evil. And everybody has, eventually they might go back and forth a little bit between in their life, but by the end of their life, they've made this choice and they're separated. That seems to be, at least that's what the Bible communicates. And so Friday I have God's City, and so the thing that kind of interests me though is God's City, is it going to be on Earth? Is Earth going to be destroyed? And then like this, there's nothing here, and then we're all in heaven, or is God's City like literally on Earth, and it's just the Earth is destroyed, but like not destroyed, like blown up, like you think of like, the Earth being around, in space and blown up, or is it just like destroyed as far as like we know it, and then God's new city and like everything is kind of changed, and the world is God's city. And I tend to think that the Earth isn't destroyed like as you think. Because you gotta understand, I think that what most people don't understand is like it's probably almost certain that we live on a flat plane. It's almost certain that we're not a cartoon ball. We're not like on a round ball flying through space at unconceivable speeds and an inconceivable amount of space around us with stars and moons, and with the stars and there's moons, but not like different solar systems and stuff like that. This is the only solar system. The stars that you see are in heaven. The moon that you see is in heaven above the firmament, and we're like on a flat plane. You can't go down more than 7 to 8 miles. It seems to be the end of the world downwards. I don't know if hell's directly below us or what you want to call it, but that seems to be the bottom. And we're not like floating on anything. That's just what existence is. And then heaven's above us. And so when the Earth is destroyed, it's not like blown up like a space, like a cartoon ball Earth, or like a ball Earth. It's just destroyed, and then there's something built upon it, or man is. And so I don't know if it's like destroyed or the level of destruction within God's city is placed here on it. And so that's just so much like more, it makes so much more sense if you just get rid of cartoon ball Earth. You can't go to space, you can't go above the firmament, you can't go land on the moon. Everything, and the only thing they took to space was your imagination. And if you did go to space, like you would never really know, because you would have to wear a spacesuit, so you would never be able to actually experience space. And then anything that you're there, whether you're in a spaceship or you have a helmet, you would just be seeing, a screen pretty much, and you would never really be able to interact with it. So you would never really know if you went out of space. So there's no way to ever know that you were in space. There's no way that you would even know if you left this planet and went to a different planet. You would never know, because you'd always be having to look through a spaceship, and you'd always have to be looking through a looking through your helmet. I mean, you can say the same thing about when you're on planes too. Like you never really know what's happening. But I think space is even more. I mean, like truly, you can go to a plane, and you don't know because you're looking through a window. You don't really know either. But I think space is a little bit different because you don't know what space looks like. It'll just be even more. And it's true to some degree, but you can see like planes, and you can be in a plane too, and you can fly, and you can open up the window. You can jump out of a plane and still survive, and go parasailing and stuff like that. But I remember I went to Disneyland when I was a kid, and when you go to Disneyland when you're a kid, you go like into this. I was like maybe 9 or something, but you go into like this, a room, and then in the room you're like supposed to be in a spaceship, and they launch you up in space, and then you're like, through C-3PO's there, and he's like guiding you. It's like a Star Wars thing, and then you end up going to the moon, trying to go to the moon, but you like overshoot the moon, and you end up being like in a galactic space, war, and then you have to like try to get you around, and you come down, but you're seeing all of it through like the windows of the spaceship, and it all looked very real when you're a kid, And so I think that's all that space is, man. Like the International Scam Station. You watch some of these videos, man. Like, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but it does seem like, I've studied the heliocentric model pretty well, and I understand it. went to the university for a while, and I understand like the heliocentric model and what gravity is and what gravity is supposed to be, which and all this stuff. And I just think that it's not. I'm not saying it's not true. Just like I'm saying that God, I don't know for sure that God and Jesus aren't the same, but I'm saying that if you look at things through truth and like through what is probable and most likely, and I think that it's almost certain that we live on a flat plane, and it's almost certain that God and Jesus are not the same, and that God and Jesus are separate, and we're just on a flat plane. The stars are above us, the moon, it's just pretty simple, and it just makes perfect sense, and it seems to be almost certainly what reality is. And so I think God's city at the end of the day is just a city on earth, on what we call earth, and it's just on the plane, on this plane, this lowly existence, and God's city is going to be here on earth, and he's going to dwell here, and it's just going to be part of another one of his kingdom. Maybe he has to, before he goes to a different place, he has to, or he wants to subdue that area. He makes the area, and then it's like kind of chaotic when he first makes it, and then after he makes it for the people, and then once the inhabitants of that place makes it a place for God to be able to live at, they make it, if you have a house or something and you have a city and there's going to be a king that's going to be there, the king like gets the area, makes it, and then you would build that city around it so that the king would be able to live there, and it would be suited for the king. And so maybe earth has to be, it was made by God, it would be like for a man found it, the king found it, and then now you have to create an environment that's suited for the king and his family to be there. And so that's pretty much what earth is being done, is it's just being, and man is being made to be suited to be around God and to be God's children, and the earth is being suited to be God's home and a place for him to live at. So now it's just like the growth of the area and make it suited for God to be here, and for the man to be God's children. And so that takes some time to do that, and that's just the process that we're going through. What we call existence is making this place suitable for God to live in, and for us to be suitable to be his children. And that might be a very really true possibility. But yeah, so the whole Bible, read it through and went through it, and we'll do the same thing next year. I have this same calendar. It seems to work, at least this year. And we'll do the same thing next year. The next few weeks. Let's see. So we have like one more week and then 2 more weeks. So the next 3 weeks, because the first week of the calendar year, that's a full week, is the time when we would start the Bible. So that would be on, so I guess it's 1 week. So next 1 week and then 2 weeks. So we have the next 2 weeks. Yeah, so it'd be the next 2 weeks. So it'd be this 1 week and then 2 weeks and then the third week. So it would be, looks like it's going to be, what do we started on? So it'd be just January 4th is when we'll start the calendar, start the reading again. So pretty much just have 2 weeks off, always 2 weeks. It seems to be, but like I said, I'm making this calendar, just making it new. So yeah, Sunday, January 4th will be the next first week that we read the calendar. And then we have Christ's birthday, which I think should be January 1st. That's kind of when I celebrate Christ's birthday now. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do, and I think that seems to be the right thing to do, because if the calendar is based on before and after Christ, then Christ's birthday would be the first day of the calendar, and that would be January 1st, right? I mean, that seems to make sense to me. If the calendar, like once again, like if the calendar is before and after Christ, like that's when we separate time. Then since we don't know when Jesus' birthday is, and maybe that's for a reason, we should just celebrate it on the 1st. Like there's a reason for like the 25th. Like why? It doesn't seem like it's a reason. There's no good reason for it. But I think that having it on the 1st, like I said, is because this is when time is separated. So the first day of the year is when Christ was born, because that's when we celebrate before and after, like before and after Christ. So this is the first day. So Christ was born, for us, maybe 2,026 years ago on the 1st. Right, that would be to make the most sense. That's one the day that we should have it. And I just think that that's what I'm doing with this calendar. And then the first week of that year, that's when we start reading the Bible, and that's going to be, like I said, Sunday, January 4th. But yeah, this is the whole Bible, read all the way through, went through the whole Bible in 50 weeks. Um, I changed like a little bit of each thing that I had on here, and then I'll write up a new one. It just like certain things. Like Thursday, I had Mark of the Beast only, and then but after reading it and going through it, I have Thursday I changed it to the Mark of the Beast and the Son of and the Seal of God. So it was like those two things together. So I just changed it around a little bit each day. I went through it and read each one, and then reflect on it. And once I actually read it, some of them I changed just a little bit, just trying to make it as perfect as I can. And yeah, I just think that it's a good thing to just kind of reflect on every year, and a good thing to go through. I think that if you have church service, you'd have church service on. Ideally, you'd have it on Saturday, and you'd go through the whole entire week. Like I read on Friday every week because I work on Saturday, but I do it after I read it on Friday. But ideally, you would want to. I think that you would want to do this church service on Saturday. But I have these videos out so that when people do the church service on Saturday, they can have the video to watch, and then just have the Sabbath on Saturday. I think Sabbath is on Saturday. I think that's an important day to keep it. Um, and so I think that you just read the Bible on Saturday, or you can read the Bible Monday through Friday, or Sunday through Friday, and just read it and go through these different things, and then on Saturday you reflect on it. And if you haven't read it by then you read the whole thing, and then you just reflect on it, and you do that every week, or something similar to that, depending on your schedule, which you can do best. But mainly, you just read the one part of the Bible and the 50 different parts. Go through it every year and just reflect on it from cover to cover. I think that's how the Bible is supposed to be read. I think that's what you get the most from it. And that's make sure you're not skipping everything, and it just has things in context, because context is important. But if you're like not reading the whole entire Bible, you're not reading from cover to cover, I think you miss a lot of context. So, at any rate, I think this is a positive year and a good year. I think that it was pretty cool that I was able to read it each week, and that I was able to make a video each Friday, and God allowed me that not to get sick, and be able to have my schedule where it was consistent enough for me to be able to do that. And I'm just really pleased, and I'm really grateful to that. So kind of the plan also is that this year on each of these days, I pretty much ask questions about what the Bible is or what these things are. But next year, I'm going to actually try to be more like on a teacher perspective, like saying what each of these things are instead of asking. I had a dream, and in the dream that seemed to be the message that was conveyed to me. And so what I want to do is when I teach these, I want to like try to get people to unlearn what they've already learned, and to try to put away past beliefs and ideas of what Christ is, what God is, what the church is, and how they should be living their life, and what reality is. And I think that I have to do that too, but I think that I've done that enough. And this is my third or fourth time going through the Bible in the last few years, so I've gotten pretty decent at understanding it and going through it and reading it in context. And I've asked a lot of questions, and so next year, like I said, I'm going to be more like a teaching instead of just asking. And hopefully that's what God wants me to do. Hopefully that's what my dreams are conveying, and hopefully that's what God wants, is conveying in my life for me to do. And I think the presentation is still going to be not as great as it can be. I'm not going to have it sit up there and have my hair combed and wearing like a nice shirt, and having like sitting down and doing it. I just don't really have the time for all that. I think that if I ever get more views, and I have more time, because I'm working a lot right now and I have my son, but I have the time to be able to do it, and that's what God wants me to focus on, then that's what I'll focus on. But right now, I'm just trying to get the information out there, and trying to do some reflection, just trying different things and see what works, and what it has. And so eventually I'll put on, as time progresses, I'm hoping at least I will just keep improving my presentation on the YouTube, and as far as quality goes, and the way that I have my background and the camera and the audio. Ideally, the quality will improve as time progresses, and it becomes more of a important thing for me to do, besides what other things that God wants me to do. So anyway, this is super long. It's about twice as long as my other ones, but is the last one I'm gonna do for the year, and I will make another one on. So it won't be the 4th. It'll be 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. On the 9th, I'll make one on January 9th, but it'll be for the week starting on January 4th, and that's when we'll start again. So, at any rate, God bless, and happy truth seeking.